this is Andi Christenson with Learning Environments at Stanton County Junior Senior High School. The first area that I wanted to highlight is our library. It's an older area. It's a big open space. Some of the pros that I see with our library is that it allows for a lot of flexibility because we've got so many different seating areas, and it tends to be inviting for that reason. We've got private workrooms that you can see off to the right. There's a door and then glass fronts, and there's one on either side of the entrance into the library. And then there's tables off to the left-hand side for group work. Some of the cons of this space are that it's very dated. The building was built back in the 70s when there wasn't much for technology, and because of that, there's not a lot of outlets for our students' Chromebooks. There's a strip on the left-hand side, but that limits our configurations pretty heavily. And then there's no really clear use or spaces in this area. So this is kind of the collaborative area that you see here, and then off to the left there's some bookshelves, but there's no clear library versus study hall, and that's going to be changed this summer, hopefully, by our maintenance staff who are planning on installing some more outlets and then clustering study tables. So that'll be really beneficial to our students. The next area that I wanted to highlight isn't a traditional area for student learning, and that would be our hallways. I don't typically use the hallways with my students, but I see them used by other teachers. Some of the pros here are that it's potentially quieter than the classroom, and hallways allow students to work alone if they need that individual piece. The cons are that it's easy for students to get distracted depending on who's going in and out of other classrooms, and it can be uncomfortable, and there's limited resources like outlets because the hallways weren't meant for students to work out there. And it can be potentially hazardous depending on what type of emergencies might be happening in the school. I feel like the hallways maximize student learning by letting a teacher send a student out if they've missed the content the day before with like a quiz or something along those lines. If the student's being disruptive but is able to stay in the hall, that might be another alternative for them. The third area that I wanted to highlight is my own classroom. These pictures show it empty, and then these are some action shots with my students working together. And then here's a few more action shots towards the front of the room. So some of the pros of it are that there's lots of different workspaces and there's room to move around. It's a pretty big room. It's kind of narrow front to back. But the biggest cons that I've got are that the tables are really heavy and awkward, and there's not a lot of configurations for them. And my projected area is small, so that also limits where I can seat students. And then it's cluttered. I inherited a lot of stuff with this room, and I didn't know what I was going to need and what I was able to throw away. So I've held on to a lot of it, and I'm finally feeling like I can throw a lot of stuff away that I don't need. So a couple of resources that I used for the course of this module. The first one would be 12 Ways to Upgrade Your Classroom Design by Jennifer Gonzalez. And this slide kind of highlights just a really quick summary of each of those. And the ones that I really liked were number 1, student input, and that would be asking students what they feel that a classroom needs or could use more of or less of. Number 5 was kind of interesting in reducing the teacher footprint. Several references talked about getting rid of a teacher desk, and that wasn't anything I had ever considered previously. And I really like the spaces that showcase learning, highlighting maybe not necessarily finished learning, but the process of learning, like sticky notes. The second reference that I looked at was Visualizing 21st Century Classroom Design by Mary Wade, and this infographic kind of highlights some different ways to change up a classroom. And then these would be my references for those.